In this video, we will show you how to install rear air shocks on this Chevy Silverado. This is part of your rear suspension located behind your rear wheels. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Locate the rear shock. You'll find that you have rear shocks on each side of the vehicle. The process is the same for either side. Now down along the bottom of the shock, if you were to look, you're going to find a bracket that comes off of the rear differential. It has a mounting bolt that makes its way from the center towards the outside. We'll be using a 21mm for each side of this bolt. A quick inspection of that hardware, replace it as necessary. You may find that you either have to raise or lower the rear differential to remove or install the mounting hardware. Let's follow the rear shock all the way up to its upper mounting point. Up in this area, we'll be using the same tools, 21mm. Keep in mind, as you remove this last piece of hardware, it's the last thing holding the shock in place. Slide that down and out of there. There it is, friend. Now we can get ready for installation of our brand new rear shock. We need to pay attention to this point right here, which is where the air hose will go. Make sure you have it in the proper orientation. It's a good idea to have this facing rearward. We'll take that rear shock, slide it into position on that frame, and continue on with our mounting bolt. Slide that right on through and start the mounting nut on. We are not going to tighten this yet. Once we have this on, we'll make our way down to the bottom, connecting it to the rear differential. You may find that you have to extend the rear shock to get it to align. Slide that right into position here. With both of them started in position, we'll continue on to snugging them up and then torquing them to 70 foot-pounds. Now we can torque this to that 70 foot-pounds. At this point, you can remove the support from under this side of the differential and make your way over to the other side of the differential to repeat the process. We have the old shock out on the driver's side. For the new shock, we'll be taking that valve and we're going to have this one facing forward. We've got this in place. Let's go ahead and torque it to 70 foot-pounds. Remove your support. Now that we have both of our shocks installed, it's time to pay attention to the rest of the hardware in our kit. You'll find that your kit came with a whole bunch of airline, it came with several circular O-rings, and it also came with some plastic caps. Let's take the line and one of the plastic caps. Now looking at the cap, you can see that you have an inverted side which has a threaded port, and then you have the flat side. Take the airline and go through the flat side, which would be the outboard side here. With that through there, we'll take the O-ring and put it down on the very tip here, and then we can take this and align it with the shock. The O-ring is going to be very hard to see while it's in my gloved hand. There it is right there. This should slide right over it, and we can press this into the shock and continue on by screwing it in until it's nice and tight. Take that line, slide it right in there. Press it in as far as you can. Ensure that the O-ring slid in as well. I'll take that cap. When you go to tighten this, you only need to tighten it by hand. You should not need to use any type of tool. Just make sure that's nice and tight. Be careful not to break it. Give the airline a light tug to ensure that it is properly secured to the shock. With that attached to the rear shock, we'll continue on with the line. As we bring it over to the support portion of the bed, make sure you have a slight bend here. That's going to give this area some flexibility. Once you're sure you have plenty of slack from that area, we'll be continuing on carefully with a razor blade or a small cutting device. We want to cut that line. Before you do cut it, ensure that you do have the proper length. Double check the line to make sure it's not crimped down in any way. At this point, you know the process. Take the cap, bring the line through the flat portion towards the threaded portion. Continue on with your rubber O-ring. We'll slide that right onto the line. And now we'll continue on with our junction here. At this point, you can set this any way you need to, but I'm going to put it into the center port. Once again, we're sliding it in as far as possible, ensuring that the O-ring slides in as well, and continue on with that cap. Start it on, snug it up. We'll give the line a quick tug to ensure that it's secured. We can rest this area for now, and we'll continue on with that line. Now we're going to use a cap and another one of those O-rings. Once we have that in position, we'll start it onto the junction. Since this will be heading over towards the passenger side, we'll make sure that we have it heading in that direction. Let's take the long portion of the line. We'll bring it across over towards the passenger side. Of course, on the passenger side, you do have an exhaust, and if you were to look above it, you also have a heat shield. We'll take the line and bring it up and over the heat shield over towards the passenger side frame, and then we can bring it over towards that shock as well. Before you continue on to cutting the line and installing your cap and O-ring on the passenger side shock, it's important to make sure you do have plenty of slack. Have a peek over at that junction, ensure that it's still in the proper placement. Give a little bit of extra slack here just in case. We'll set the rest of this aside for now. Make our way back here to the junction. We've got our last line. Slide it right through that cap, get our O-ring in place. Get this into the junction. While we're here, we'll just confirm each and every one of these connections is tight. Now we can take the rest of this line, we're going to bring it towards the driver's side and then along the frame, all the way towards the rear. Since there's an electrical harness that makes its way along the frame, we'll be making our way across that so we can just wire tie this whole thing in place. We'll bring this line all the way back here. At this point, you need to figure out exactly where you want to have your valve. You might have it up along this area, or you could have it down along the bottom. It's really up to you. Have a look from the outside and see what makes the most sense. The process is the same no matter where you put it. As far as this area is concerned, there's only a couple areas that you really want to pay attention to. You have the area that should have the license plate. You can't put it there. Along this port, we also have the area for that wiring harness for your trailer. You could put it along the side, pretty much anywhere along this area, or even down along the bottom of the bumper cover. I'm going to put it approximately right here. Before you drill that hole, it's important to take hold of the valve. You want to look for the threaded portion here that will slide through that bumper. Make sure you have the proper size drill bit. You can use a 5/16 or use a step drill bit, which is what I'm going to use. We only need to go large enough to fit this through. As I mentioned, you can pick anywhere you want to put this. My preference is right about here. Now that we know it fits, we'll just go ahead and clean up the hole a little bit here and we can continue on with installing the valve. Now let's pay attention to our line again. Before you continue on to trimming this, it's important to make sure that you have enough slack. You want to have a little bit of movement from each one of the areas. Bring mine to about here. I still got plenty of slack everywhere. We'll trim off the excess with our razor blade, of course. Continue on with your cap, your rubber O-ring. See that on there? Now we'll be using our valve. When you look at this, you can see that you do have one side that has a threaded portion that's wider than the other. We want to make sure that we have the wider portion facing inside. That's where the line's going to go on to. Slide that right on there. Double check to make sure that the O-ring fits in where it should, of course. We'll tighten this mounting nut. You're going to have to hold onto the valve while doing so. Give that line a quick tug. Now we'll continue on along the bottom of the valve here. We'll continue with our mounting nut. For this, we'll bottom it out against the plastic area and then just snug it down. We want to be careful not to break anything. Use a 13mm for this. Double check to make sure it's secured in place. Now we'll continue on with a few wire ties. We want to make sure that we have this secured in place. As I mentioned, we do have that wiring harness. We'll continue running it along this. Now we can continue on securing the rest of our line. Now what you'll find in your kit is it came with several of these locking clips. The small area here is for the line to sit through, and for the other part, you'll have to drill several holes inside of the bed body mount that makes its way across from one side of the vehicle to the other. Let's use the center punch to start this hole. To drill this out, we'll be using a 1/4-inch drill bit. Now we can install our plastic clip. We'll press that in as far as we can. Ensure it's facing in the proper direction. We want to be able to slide the line straight on through there. Let's continue down the line. Let's get our clips in here. Now we can get the line in place here. Just press it right into the locking clips. Should be able to hear an audible click. We'll give it a little tug to make sure it's secure as we continue along the side. Nice. Now I want to have another one of those plastic clips up along the top of the heat shield. So what I'll do is from down along the bottom, make my marking, drill a hole, put in my clip from the top, and then latch that in. We don't want to be too close to the edge there. insert the plastic clip, like I said, from the top. We want to make sure that we have the port facing from one side of the vehicle towards the other. I can see I have my locking ears clearly in place. This part's going to be a little bit hard to see. We'll just reach up there and press this into place. I heard an audible click, and I'm sure it's secure. One last quick inspection of everything to ensure that we are properly secured. Now let's talk about how to fill the system. Down at the farthest valve that we had installed in the rear bumper is where you're going to continue on by adding air. It's a good idea to make sure you have the weight of the vehicle on the ground while doing so. We'll take your airline, put it right up on there, and continue adding air. With the weight of the vehicle back on the ground, let's continue adding pressure up to the desired amount. Once you've completed that action, make sure you protect the area with your protective plastic cap. Okay, friend, we finished the installation and both sides of the vehicle are complete. At this point, you want to take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.